Hi guys, Hayden here. Today I want to talk about internal belief systems, or the set of beliefs we have that guide how we live life. In many ways, I like to think of them as instructions because that's kind of what they are. They guide how we behave, how we relate to other people, how we manage money, what we think is even possible. And even though they're the bedrock in a lot of ways of how we go about creating our lives, very rarely do we fully understand or even recognize the beliefs or the instructions that we have. This is partly because they are subconscious most often, meaning that they're affecting you without you actively noticing it. And the other part is because you didn't have a say in creating a lot of the instructions that you now have. Most of them were given to you as you grew up, by your parents, by your community, by your friends. Through our interactions with them, we were taught how to behave, how to think, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. Sometimes these instructions can work to benefit us in terms of serving others or maybe what we think about ourselves, but most often they actually inhibit our ability to express ourselves and become who we actually are. If you were made, for example, as a child to believe that your creative expression, we'll say you like singing, was not a good thing. You were told that you didn't have a whole lot of talent, and you were told that singers don't make a whole lot of money. Growing up, you're probably not going to actually pursue singing, even if you like it, because you don't have the talent and because you're not going to be able to support yourself in that way. Or if growing up you watched your parents struggle and stress over money and financial issues, your instructions are going to tell you that money is hard to come by and money causes stress and pain and anxiety, which is going to make it harder for you to make money and support yourself as an adult. And there's a million different ways that these instructions can show up in the life that you're now leading, but ultimately, whether they serve you or inhibit you, they have been a fundamental component in creating the life that you now lead. And if the life that you now lead is not the life that you ultimately want, we need to become aware of what these instructions are, because awareness of these instructions brings the option of choice. And if you're unaware of the instructions you're following, you're going to continue to blindly follow them. You're going to create more of the life that you've had up until this point. The more that we recognize and articulate these instructions and bring them into the light, so to speak, the more power we have, the more choice that we have in asking, do I actually want to keep this as part of my belief system, as part of my set of instructions? If yes, that's awesome. But if not, we can say this no longer serves me and I'm going to choose a different set of instructions to approach this situation and approach my life. I'm going to choose a different reaction to this situation. I'm going to choose to show up as a different person. And this choice is what brings about the change that you're ultimately looking for. So the question then becomes, how do we do that? And my first suggestion when I get to ask this question is to start journaling, start writing. A lot of people haven't done that and are a little leery in doing that. But once you start to do it and understand the advantages and effects of it, it's easier to turn into a habit. Because when you think about it, these instructions, these beliefs that we hold don't show up all at once. They don't just appear. They very subtly influence the way that we act, that we behave, the thoughts that we have. So in order to actually understand what's driving those things, we have to do a little bit of detective work. We have to start to understand what are the patterns behind these things. And writing it down is one of the best ways to do it, because then we have an actual physical copy, a physical record that we can start to compare and contrast, look for patterns and say, what's driving this pattern? What's behind this pattern? And start to actually get at those subconscious beliefs and those instructions. Alternatively, we can do personality assessments like Myers-Briggs, Enneagram. We can start to ask other people in our lives for feedback on how we relate to other people, how we act, how we behave, to try and start to put together a sense of what are these patterns and what are the actual instructions. But bottom line, and however you do it, the more clarity and insight that you can have on these instructions, the more you're able to choose something else and ultimately create the life that you want. So my question for you is, what impact have these instructions, your instructions, had in your life? What are some things you've done to become more aware and more conscious of these instructions? And do you have any advice for others looking to do the same? Looking forward to reading your answers in the comments below. Thanks, guys.